If everyone could take their seats, please. I would like to call to order tonight's meeting of the CUSD 201 Board of Education, a regular meeting, February 9, 2016. And roll call, please.
Ms. Ambrose. Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mrs. Notbush.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
We could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The first one for the December 28th Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee, the only people that need to deal with this are the three members who were at the committee. So the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes closed session of the December 28th, 2015 meeting of the Board of Education Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee as presented.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Okay, so that's all we need. We don't need to,
You don't need to abstain? No.
no, we don't need to abstain because we weren't,
Right.
it was just the three of you. Okay, so motion passed. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the January 26, 2016 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the January 26, 2016 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, are there any public comments? Okay, the first item on the agenda, consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number one, personnel recommendations. Marion, how do you say that? Guillermo.
And
E-
actually, Marie, if I can, it's the other way, it should be the other way around.
Guillermo Marin, okay. Evening, thank you. Evening custodian, Manning Elementary School.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ambrose. Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Okay, the first item that we will have under discussion is the Westmont Senior High School in Innovative Programs. You want to start, Mr. Balderman?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening to everybody. Superintendent Carey and Board of Education, thank you so much for having us present here tonight. And I'm really excited because you're going to get to meet some of our teachers who are going to discuss some of their really creative and innovative programs. You've heard a lot, of course, about our AP program, but there are so many other phenomenal things that are happening that our teachers are doing with our students. And so you're going to hear just a sampling of those tonight, but some really creative teaching practices that really foster student engagement, are innovative, and I think are high quality. So you'll hear from our teachers tonight. And we're going to start off, Kevin Weck and Lindsay Peterzak are also going to discuss briefly our data team program, which I think is innovative in its own right. We see that 99% graduation rate, and that's a true team effort. But at the center of it is the data team that really scrutinizes over student performance on a weekly basis, and then it comes up with interventions and programs to make sure that all of our students are successful. And we're almost very confident that for 3 years in a row, we will only lose one student that started with us as a freshman, and it will not graduate within 4 years. So we're very proud of that. We still have some more work to do. It's a continuous improvement program, but we're just tenacious when it comes to looking after our students. And as I say, it's a whole community team effort, starting with the board, the parents, the central office, but really culminates with our teachers who have tremendous care for our students. And the data team is a central part of that. So in a way, it's innovative in its tenacity, that we are serious about doing whatever we need to do to make sure students are successful. So Kevin Weck and Lindsay Peterzek are going to discuss that.
Thank you, Mr. Alderman. First, I'd like to start off by saying good evening to the Westmont community, school board, Mr. Carey. Thank you for having us here tonight. I want to talk a little bit about data team. Our data team stems from our district vision, small giants in doing whatever it takes to support our students in their success and their graduation from Westmont High School. And some of the key players that we have on our data team include administrators, we have teachers, we have counselors, we also have special education teacher, social worker, school psychologist, and also speech and language pathologist. We also bring in outside resources such as 360, our school resource officer. And what we do is on a weekly basis is we gather student performance data, and we take a look at students who are struggling, whether it's academically, socially, behaviorally, or with attendance. And we cross-reference a lot of our data to figure out what we can do in terms of supporting our students and being successful in high school. And our team gets together, we create an individual intervention plan to support our students, and that's every week. So sometimes those plans need to be adjusted and tweaked on a weekly basis to help those students. But really, part of the Small Giants, the beauty of it is that we get a chance to work with those students every single week, bring them into our offices, talk to them, find out what's going on with them, and really provide as much support as possible from a team and collaborative effort. And at this time, Lindsay would like to talk to you guys a little bit about what those interventions look like on a more specific level.
So in terms of progress monitoring, we look at our students systematically in small groups. So each week we'll take a look at 6 or 7 students who have been on our radar based on the data, and it's provided. We look at standardized tests, attendance, referrals, our weekly F list that's pulled. We identify problems. So we look at why a student is not succeeding in classes. That might be reaching out to teachers in the classroom, looking in the grade book for specific grades, and is it assessments? Is it something that's homework or classwork aligned? And we'll reach out to that student in small groups or one-on-one to get a grasp of where their head is at and what their needs are, how we can best support them. From that point, we'll put a plan in place for the week of how we're going to approach the student and what we're going to put in place for them in order to catch up, feel confident about being successful in the future. And then we'll follow up on a regular basis. So we have 6-week intervals for some of our students to make sure we're maintaining and not letting them slip through the cracks. And then some students are a little bit more frequent depending on their needs. So to wrap up, I think that our data team spends a lot of time reaching every single student, and we make sure through a broad number of people, including our teachers, that we are reaching every child and not letting them slip through the cracks. So now to the more exciting things that are happening in our classroom. I'm going to throw it to one of our freshman teachers in English, Brian Roach.
Hi, good evening. Okay, so the project that we're going to be working on is through StoryCorps, and it's really a partnership with StoryCorps, which is kind of an oral history project in the fashion of Studs Terkel. Started in 2003. Here we go. So it started in 2003, and really their mission is just to kind of preserve and then share our stories. So what I'm going to be having my students work on, which will be all freshmen, regular and honors, plus one small group of a sophomore class. They're going to be working on choosing somebody to interview, and they really have choice within whether it's a friend, somebody at school like a fellow teacher, a fellow peer, a teacher, or a family member. And then what they do is they develop their questions, kind of an inquiry-based model. So they develop these questions, and then they interview that person, and then they record it. Now, StoryCorps just came out with an app last year, so that app kind of helps guide them through this process, but in no way is it necessary to complete the project. So they can do it just with a simple recording device through the Chromebook or through a cell phone. The app is compatible with iPhones and Androids. So really, that's it. The deadlines for this project, I'm going to introduce it to them after spring break. So right around, I think it's like April 6th or so. And then after that, I have actual facilitators coming out from StoryCorps. So that's our community partnership. He's from the Chicago branch. His name is Francesco De Salvatore. So he comes out with one of his colleagues. They give about an hour-long workshop on April 6th, which is Wednesday. And that'll be from 2 to 3. And then after that kind of presentation, just like, here's what StoryCorps is, here's our mission, here's what we're all about. Then we're going to have a smaller workshop-style session with those two facilitators that focus on narrative kind of storytelling techniques. And that'll be for about 15 students. That'll go from 3 to 4. So after that, that's kind of the initial hook for students. Like, here's the authentic reason why we're doing this, and here's an audience beyond our classroom and each other, which I think really helps motivate them. Because they see, oh, I don't have to just get a grade from Mr. Roach anymore. Now I have an actual audience, right? And in this case, it's a nationwide, worldwide audience. So I wanted to leave you with an example of what they'll be doing. So this is an excerpt that was pulled out of a larger context. So the interviews can last from 15 minutes to about 45 minutes. And this clip is about 2 minutes. So it really takes them through this writing process to revise and edit and then pull out their excerpt that they want to be no more than about 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, and in that excerpt is where you really want to have a story that's told. Okay?
People familiar with StoryCorps through NPR, National Public Radio?
I wasn't until I looked at this earlier.
Let me check the audio real quick.
I like, as Brian said, they're presenting to an audience outside of the school building, and there's choice involved and inquiry. It's pretty powerful model.
Does the app cost any money?
No, so the app's free, and really, if you, I'll show you, I don't know if the audio is going to work or not, but there is. So if you go to StoryCorps.org, that's the site.
Okay.
And you can download the app through that, or thank you.
See if I can get the audio to work for you.
So you could download the app on your Android or iPhone, so it works with iOS as well, and it really just kind of guides you through everything from the title. So you can create your own title for it, put in your little byline, and then it takes you through this interview process of generating questions. You can really pick your own questions if you want, or you can enter in your own questions. So what I'm considering is having them kind of focus it through a theme, and it'll be more like a coming of age theme. And it's like, what I'm kind of going back and forth with is whether or not I should give them that theme or give them liberty to choose a theme. Right? So based on your theme, you can choose different questions. So if you wanted to interview, let's say, a loved one or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a grandparent or a mom or a dad or a friend, I mean, those questions could change. Right?
Sure.
Happen to listen to NPR in the mornings on your way to work, perhaps on Fridays at 7:25, usually play excerpt, and I'm usually a blubbering mess, but I always pick the most emotional.
Yeah.
Well, I listened to this one earlier. That was a pretty good story that he told.
Yeah, and so this is, like I said, an excerpt pulled out of a larger context of the interview, and we'll be using a lot of excerpts from, it's a book that has a collection of these interviews, and it's called Listening is an Act of Love. And NPR has a few different publications like that, but that's where we'll be pulling and kind of using as our mentor and model text. But I'll be working alongside with them so they could see what I'm doing, the risks that I'm taking, some of my own failures, things like that. Just because I think it's a good experience for them to see me working with them.
Try it now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wait, are we going to cry now?
I can tell you I already am going to cry.
All right, so this is a 12-year-old kid who interviewed his grandfather, who was 75. And he interviewed him about a specific moment in his life.
StoryCorps Oral History Project.
Is the volume's okay? Yeah, okay.
Last week, Ezra Awumed, who's 12, interviewed his grandfather, Sam Harmon, in a StoryCorps booth in Washington, D.C. What was the saddest moment of your life?
Early in the Navy, stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. One day, my shipmates and I decided to come to Washington to visit the Capitol. While they were at the bars, I decided to sightsee. I walked around the monuments all day and was just tired out and decided that I would go to a movie. It was right here on Pennsylvania Avenue. There was a movie house there. And I went up to buy a ticket. There was a glass there, a ticket seller behind it. And off of the glass reflected the Capitol dome. And I just thought to myself, what a great way to end the day, drinking in all of this democracy. I called for the ticket she was reading. She punched the machine. I reached my hand to get the ticket and lay down the money, and she pulled it back and said, "You can't come in here." She saw my black hand and refused to sell me a ticket. The Capitol dome was superimposed on her angry face, angered that I would have the temerity to ask to buy a ticket. And I just walked the streets crying all night. That's the saddest, without any exception. It's the most painful recollection of anything that's ever happened to me that I have.
75-year-old Sam Harmon speaking to his grandson last week here in Washington, D.C. To find out when a StoryCorps...
So that's, like I said, an example of what they'll be working on. An extension activity of that would be to take that, the initial stages of a profile piece and develop it into a full feature piece that includes narrative writing, which is what we've been focused on this semester, plus including research, which is where we want to end up this semester to kind of prep them for their sophomore year. Okay.
That's great.
Thank you.
I would not have fixed my makeup before I came if I knew I was going to have to go after that. Good evening. Thank you for having me back to talk about forensic science. The last time I was here was a few years ago. That was when the forensic science class was still a one-semester class. And due to student demand in combination with your support, which I thank you for again, we expanded the course to a full year in the 2013-2014 school year. We've been able to add a number of additional units as a result of having that second semester added to the course. They've been very high interest, engaging units with a lot of positive student feedback. We now have a unit on autopsy, which really focuses on death and all of the aspects of death, establishing cause of death, manner of death, and mechanism of death. Manner of death being whether it's a homicide or natural causes, mechanism of death meaning the biological reason for the cessation of life, the physiological reason that that death occurred. Toxicology, which is the unit that we are currently in this semester and we're wrapping up. I have some pictures to show you of some labs that we've been working on. I'm still fortunate enough to have some solid ties with the Chicago office of the FBI and some connections at the national level and the federal level. And through those connections, I've been able to have a guest speaker come out during our criminal psychology and profiling unit. He is a former profiler for the FBI, and so he comes in during that unit and talks to the students about a couple major topics, actually. First, with threat assessment and risk assessment. From a behavioral psychology standpoint, how do you and kind of their process and their checklist of assessing risk in terms of psychological behavior and when that becomes a threat to security, whether it be in a school or a government office or a neighborhood, and that sort of thing, and then gets into a little bit more of the criminal profiling aspect and how the profilers work, signs and symptoms and signatures that they look for as they are working up a profile of a suspect. The students after that are presented with some some cases of their own, some real, some fictional, and they're asked to, using the psychology that we go through in combination with what the FBI profiler gives them, they're asked to work up their own profiles of the suspects, which they get a kick out of seeing how close they can get to, when it's a real case that they've been given, how close that they can actually get to the actual profile that was created for that suspect in some high-profile cases. Entomology occasionally is hit or miss depending on the weather. 2 years ago, I believe it was, when we had the big polar vortex winter, we didn't really get to the point where the snow melted enough and the weather ever got warm enough that school year to really get a good sample for our entomology unit. So we have to do a little tap dancing if the weather doesn't cooperate. Things might be completely different this year with the milder winter that we've had, so we'll have to take that into account as we start to do our entomology graphs and charts and take a look at insect activity and how that relates to establishing time of death and cause of death. Arson, we kind of work around the AP testing schedule because it is a senior class and a lot of them have a lot of AP classes within their schedule. So in May is when we tend to focus on arson as the AP schedule permits. And we have been able to incorporate some additional case studies with the second semester being added. We just finished a pretty in-depth analysis of it's kind of cut off on the bottom of the slide, of the O.J. Simpson homicide case. We just had this past fall the 20th anniversary of the verdict. And these are seniors who were not alive when that all went down and that all happened. And so it's interesting from my point of view and from your point of view, I'm sure, having that hindsight, it's interesting to hear their fresh perspective, fresh eyes, and a younger perspective. And it takes a lot of discussion to get them to realize, you know, your average citizen didn't have the working knowledge of DNA 20 years ago that we all now have, and there was no CSI, and there was no criminal minds, and they get to analyze that case from a lot of different points of view. They take a look through the prosecution's eyes, where they did well and where they went wrong. They look at the case through the defense's eyes and how the defense was able to produce a not guilty verdict. They look at that case through the jury's eyes with the evidence at hand. Why did the jury return that not guilty verdict? And they also, of course, then have to analyze the evidence from a forensic perspective. What did the evidence show in terms of means, motive, opportunity? Did the evidence that was presented at trial prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? So they just wrapped up their big O.J. Simpson case study as well. So currently, like I said, we are doing our toxicology unit. We have 2 big labs that we've completed over the last couple weeks. The first one, which are these first set of pictures that you see, they were given victims' blood samples. They're always given a background, a backstory, and an introduction to the case at hand, and then they are asked to do the analysis and asked to perform the test to come up with a conclusion for that case. So in this scenario that they were given a young woman who went to a nightclub, was then taken to the hospital after she was found unresponsive in the alley behind the club. They were given blood samples to test, and they had to do some chemical analysis and try and identify which club drug that she was exposed to, and kind of verify their findings based on their chemistry and their lab results. The second one that we just finished end of last week and into yesterday's class was testing blood alcohol concentration. Again, they were given the backstory and the background information. There was a New Year's Eve party. We have a car crash that has occurred. We have 2 potential suspects. They're given the sworn statements that each suspect has given to the police. They're given the blood samples, and they have to do some reference testing with some indicators, determine the blood alcohol concentration at the time of the crash for each suspect based on their blood alcohol concentration at the hospital when their statements are given, figure out whether or not the suspects are telling the truth or whether they're lying and they should be charged with DUI. We really do a lot of, I think forensic science, as I spoke a couple years ago, ties in a lot of other subjects. They do a lot of writing when they're doing their lab reports. We tie in, I'm kind of excited that the government class was moved to senior year because it coincides nicely when we're talking about search and seizure and gathering warrants and constitutional rights of the witness and the suspect. It ties in nicely with what they're learning in their government class during their senior year. And I found that it's been a good discussion, a springboard for a lot of good discussion. I was telling the students that I was giving this presentation tonight, and I said, if there's anything you want the board to tell me. So I tried to pick some of the respectable quotes that they gave me, because I didn't want to ruin Mr. Weck's attendance challenge, so I didn't want to include the one that said if this class wasn't first period, I'd be late every day. I'm pretty sure that's why they schedule it for first period. Mr. Weck can disagree with me if he wants, but I'm going to stick to that opinion. Anthony Griffiths just signed his letter of intent to play football next year in college, but he has decided, as a result of being in forensic science, to pursue a degree in criminal justice. BJ is the gentleman who made the comment about if the class wasn't first hour, he might not make it to school as often as he does on time. We have quite a few students that are now planning on going into some aspect of psychology or criminal justice or sociology with the intent of eventually entering law enforcement. I have some students who have already graduated that I'm still in touch with that have their eyes set on a career in the FBI as well. So again, thank you for your support and your continued support of the course, and we're doing some great things.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to take that course.
Mr. Chamberlain, also from our science department, is wearing a vest in celebration of Mardi Gras. So,
this is not my Tuesday vest.
Did you bring any food to share with us for being Fat Tuesday?
No, I left it in the car. Sorry. So hello, thank you for having me. I'm Nathan Chamberlain. I teach biology and chemistry, and I'm here to answer the question, who needs technology? And I'm also here to emphatically answer, students need technology. And I'm going to kind of explain why. And you may think why, or more importantly, how has technology improved student learning in my Westmont High School classroom? It's allowed me to do a couple of things. The first of which is to clone myself. I don't mean literally the technology isn't quite there for me to make copies of myself. Ms. Erasmus can confirm this, that this
Not yet.
we're working on it. What I mean is that I can take screencast videos of myself and I can put them with technology. Camtasia is what I use. I can also take video of what actually occurred in the classroom. So I can take that content and I can use tools like Edpuzzle, where you can embed questions into videos. I can use learning management systems like Modern Teacher, and which Brian uses as well as me, and Ms. Kaplan is also using, and Moodle, and I can deliver the content through those sites. I can deliver all sorts of things, my videos, other videos, all sorts of things through those sites, and I can also assess using those sites. I can get good feedback from students how they're understanding things, especially when coupled with the extremely powerful tools of Google Apps in the classroom. And I think maybe even more importantly in the cloning aspect is that I not only can get this information from everybody, but I can also deliver feedback immediately to students wherever they are, as long as they have one of these in their pocket, or a library card, or an iPad, or what have you. They can get feedback immediately so that they don't have to turn in homework, wait a day, me to fill it out, give it back to them when they may have forgotten it. They can assess. Moodle allows you to reassess over and over and over again and get feedback every single time on a slightly different test. So I can clone myself. If a student is absent, that's fine. They can watch what I did in class, or watch the content, or they can watch me do something like light ice on fire, which is something we did in class as well. So there's that. The other thing technology has allowed me to do is to gamify my classroom. And what I mean by that is I can basically turn a lot of things that are happening in my classroom into a game. There's tools, there's apps like Kahoot, Socrative, quizzes that are basically video games that you put questions into. The students do them. There's a lot of competition. There's high levels of engagement. I'm getting a whole bunch of secret data from them about what they understand and changing things to explain things to them. And they really enjoy it. I get a lot of great feedback, especially about this aspect. I also have unit certificates that the students are very excited to earn. They get gold, bronze, or silver certificates not in that order, depending on their level of mastery throughout the unit, which they always brag to me, oh, I got that gold certificate, because they really, really want it. And really, it's just a PDF that's automatically generated, and they have to work very hard in order to get it. But it's that extra extrinsic motivation that might help the people that chemistry or biology isn't their thing. They really seem to enjoy it. And also, it helps me help students to help students, which is a mouthful. But what I mean by that is this is a study guide that I created in my classroom. Maybe it looks a little different than study guides that you've seen before. It was on a mole unit. Moles, very important in chemistry. Mr. Balderman asked me what is chemistry, or what's the obsession with moles. Moles in chemistry are really the language of chemistry. They're very important. They allow you to compare everything to everything, but it's really tough, and it's really mathy. And the kids struggle with it. So I thought I'd try to do something a little bit different. And each one of these QR codes is something that the kids can scan if they have a phone or an iPad or what have you. And it links to a video of students solving the problem for other students, them going through step by step in the problem. And I had all my students do this. Some of them just kind of made a regular video. Some of them, because this really spoke to their interest levels, they went above and beyond. This one in particular, let me see if I get it to work. Oh, come on. They created a stop motion video to solve this problem. And I didn't even ask them to do this. I just told them to create a video, and this is what they produced for me. And it just blew my mind. I love seeing this. It really spoke to them, really engaged them, and they were so proud, and their post-test data looked fantastic. They really, really understood it well, which is really what we're trying to get at. So I know I'm supposed to only talk for a little bit, so I'll be quick. And really the whole goal of this is that technology helps me not only get in little interventions, I'm getting a whole bunch of data, but I can also track it really easily. The data team works with data. That helps them a lot. It helps me a lot in my classroom. And I can get from here, this is early in the unit, assessment data, where down on the edge for you, the graphs, these are the only students that have really reached mastery of the subject, to here, where I see a whole bunch of students have mastered it at a really, really high level. We can move on to the next subject, and I feel confident that they have really learned it. And I think they've had a little bit of fun along the way. In the future, we're going to do other things. We're going to talk about connecting with experts, bringing people that can't physically come into the classroom, because there's people all over the world that are also connected to the internet, and they can use Google Hangouts or Skype or what have you in order to come in and kind of speak with our students. We're also going to do some citizen science, where we use apps like What's Invasive, where they can actually track some invasive species in the area. They take the data, they give it to scientists that can maybe help with policy in the future. And many, many more things that I'm not allowed to talk about because of the 5 minutes. So again, to emphatically answer the question, who needs technology? Students need technology. That's it.
Great energy.
Thank you.
Jack, can I sign up for his class?
Yeah, for all of these classes. So Mr. Lambert's going to be our final presenter tonight, but he might need a minute to transition to his work. But I really think you sense the passion, the creativity, and as I said, these are just examples of some of our teachers and the hard work and the passion they put in to creating unique curriculum. You just get a taste of it tonight.
I find that integrating that technology like that into the lessons and assignments just absolutely fascinating, because I think students learn by what they're passionate about, and so learning about moles and chemistry and putting it to a song that they've created and running through a lesson with it is going to stick with them their entire life, more so than just reading about it in a textbook. So the way that it's being integrated in the classroom compared to just even a few years ago when we were saying, don't let the kids bring a cell phone into the classroom. You know, can't have that. And just to take something so powerful and put it in their hands and use it every day, I think it's It's light years from where we were, obviously, when we went to high school, so it's just fascinating to see.
Yeah, until I saw that, I used to be cutting edge at one time. Anyway, it's hell to get. All right.
Love your tie.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm a geography teacher, and I live it, and I'm here to present on what happens outside the classroom and the ways that we complement what we do inside, outside the classroom. And so I'm here to talk about Geography Club. Geography Club has been around since I started teaching in the district 17 years ago. And basically, the motto here speaks for it all. Join Geography Club and see the world without leaving Chicago. I was an international tour director and tour guide here in Chicago as well before I became a teacher at Westmont. And I wanted to bring that to school because it's, I believe the best classroom is a classroom that's on the move, and the only way I could do that at the time, okay, was to take kids outside of it. And so, basically, okay, yeah. The goal of the class, or goal of the club, is to get students outside their comfort zone, teach them how to, reach beyond Westmont. And I was always struck by how many kids hadn't been in the city when I started teaching, and really didn't know the first thing about it when it's right there on our doorstep. So I teach them how to use Metra and the CTA, and we use that almost exclusively these days. Try to, get involved. I'm an enthusiastic teacher as far as this goes, and I'm not afraid to get in there with them and have a lot of fun, and they're not afraid to have fun either and really take advantage of what's out there. I teach them where to go, all the, some of the basics, how to get there, how to gain a new perspective on things a little bit, see things from a different way. Visit our museums in Chicago, take full advantage. If there's one-of-a-kind exhibits, we take advantage of that as well. We check out all our festivals because they're free. Fun doesn't have to be expensive. World Music Fest we go to several times a year. We take them out. It's active. We go to the beach once a year typically, or to the zoo. We ice skate at Millennium Park. We just had that last weekend, had 45 kids show up for that. If you don't know how to skate, that's okay. People are always willing to help you out a little bit. We meet interesting people. I know a lot of people around the city. We run into people who are willing to, open themselves up to us. Maryland's a voodoo priestess, and Chicago's Pilsen East Arts. Kids always enjoyed her. John Podmajersky, a real Chicago character who just reinvented a neighborhood on his own over the years. New food. Food is a real major part of the kids need to eat, and they're not happy unless they do so. Number one rule is, when we go try new food, it's always try something you've never had before. Hopefully they like it, but it doesn't always work out that way. Most of all, try to immerse themselves in different cultures, and so we go into the neighborhoods and Chinatown once a year at least. Kids are always wanting Chinatown. And of course we eat, and a teenager with a full stomach is a happy teen. Any of you with teenagers know that. We do interesting things that are outside the norm, such as on Holy Thursday evening, we do a church tour. And that's something that is a pilgrimage in Chicago that few people know about unless you grew up in the city. And I have we've had as many as 80 kids go on this, and we always fill at least one bus without a problem, and I have to turn people down. But we'll visit a number of churches that evening that are open for visitation. It's just fantastic church architecture, and then at the end of the night we eat. And so it's a late night, but the kids just enjoy it immensely. Mr. Carey went last year. I know he enjoyed it. We go to Pilsen every year as well, take full advantage of all the art in the streets. Sometimes we take part in the Via Crucis, the way of the cross sits there, and just kind of observe. We're not a religious club by any stretch, but we're a cultural club, and there's a lot of culture in religion, and there's a lot of different ways, and so we take advantage of all that. At Christmas, we have our own traditions. We go down to the Chris Kindle Market. We've started doing this on the Friday after finals ends, and we go to Carol at the Cloud Gate, and we had 80 kids come this year for that, all on Metro. So we'll take over a Metro train, or at least an entire car. We go down to the Maxwell Street Market at least once a year on a Sunday, and we get high quality, slightly used goods at rock bottom prices. Well, it's a stretch, but at least it's good, and some free entertainment, and of course lots of food in fine surroundings.
South Asian culture, we do once a year, or every other year, I should say, visiting the various Hindu temples and the Baha'i Temple, Devon Avenue neighborhood in Chicago. We always hit a fire game at least once a year. And we also occasionally do the Chicago Marathon and various other things. So occasionally we leave Chicago, explore Illinois. We head down to the Mississippi Palisades, do a little hiking down there. We go to a wonderful haunted house there, Raven's Grin, and then we also end at Galena. So sometimes Bishop Hill as well, if you're familiar with that. Now we travel internationally. 2006, we went to Italy. 2008, we went to Costa Rica, went to China in 2009, Italy again in 2011, Rome, Florence, Venice, Capri were our destinations there, and Mr. Blackburn was on that trip, and he'd always wanted to get to Vesuvius, and so we got him to the top of Vesuvius, as well as everybody else. 2013, we went to Hungary, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Poland, and Germany. And we exposed ourselves to all kinds of art, some of it good, some of it interesting. History, the wall, we went to Auschwitz on that trip as well. Fine dining, of course, in all manner with all the kids. And everybody, a lot of faculty as well. Spain and Morocco was 2014, last year. Kids got to swim in the Mediterranean, take a camel ride in Morocco, go to the Alhambra, and they got their hands dirty. And they always do, cooking. We have cooking classes are a part of it. Dancing, flamenco. They learned how to flamenco in the past. They've learned how to tarantella, and it gets them in touch with the culture. We also have faculty come along on these, and I'll usually have. These aren't free trips. They're paying to come on these trips. And I've always felt that the more faculty members who get out there and experience the world, the easier my job becomes teaching geography, because then they're including it in their classes as well. And it allows people like Mr. Chamberlain there to teach in the middle of a Roman ruin, for example. So it's no better surroundings for his class. Last summer we went to Quebec with a great group, went whale watching. Kids really threw themselves into it, actually swimming in the St. Lawrence, getting involved with a festival or two we met and saw. It was just a great time. We're leaving for Cuba in a few weeks. And then 2017, pending your approval, perhaps Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand will be next on the agenda, perhaps. So we'll see. So give you an idea, so sample year, we got about 12 to 13 trips. And one of the keys here, one of the goals, I should say, is to remove the fear of the city, and create urban explorers. I want kids to be able to, by senior year, know how to do everything, but they don't need me, but they still come along, and they help run the trips. Kaylee Price is an excellent example of this. She has, been involved since freshman year, and now, when I need an extra hand to kind of help lead or bring up the rear or whatever, she's one of the people I count on, and so it's great in that respect. Teach students the ease of getting down there on their own, and get exposed to the real Chicago. I'm a little open about how I feel sometimes. I'm Navy Pier, I'm not a fan of. No Hard Rock cafes, no chains, and no ketchup on hot dogs. So there's certain things we just can't, let up on. It's experiential learning, and it has a lasting impact, I feel, more than what I can do in the classroom oftentimes. I believe short meetings, long trips. I'm not a fan of long meetings, so I'm trying to keep it short here. The average trip is 8 hours. The average meeting is non-existent, actually. These days, I just make an announcement, come and get your slip if you're interested. And so that's how it rolls. It's education camouflaged in fun. It's low cost. I don't believe fun has to be expensive. The average trip cost is the cost of the Metro, and they don't pay until they show up. The Metro waits for no one, and I don't like dealing with money. So they show up, they pay on the train, and we take care of it. I'll buy the tickets in advance, but then I always have the tickets. It's pay as you go. It's also self-regulating. The fact that all the trips are on weekends or holidays is the fact that the only people who are going to show up are the people who want to be there. And I have never had a disciplinary issue on one of these, because that's how it works. And so it's really nice in that respect. So if we were going to quantify things data-wise, I collected some, and I'd never bothered to do that before. So in 17 years of student trips, we do 12 to 13 trips a year, 20 to 80 students per trip, average is about 40. Do 4 to 6 class field trips per year with about 25 to 50 students each. 2 250 students, faculty, and family have traveled abroad with Geography Club on trips lasting between 7 to 12 days. And I figure in total, about 10,000 students overall, many repeats along the way, have been taken out of their comfort zones in the hopes of creating more globally minded citizens and lifelong learners, which is right in tune with what we're trying to do here. So, and we'll end with a trip with the Geography Club might leave you exhausted, but if you're smart, you'll come along and join the fun. So, all right, thank you.
Looks very nice.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you so
nice.
much, and I can definitely say, well, first off, thank you for the kind words about Kaylee, and yes, she has definitely caught the bug. And I think that will stay with her for the rest of her life. She's constantly talking about exploring and going and seeing new places and has that passion, and you helped foster that in her through all of these experiences, and I'm sure in many other students as well, so thank you for that.
I will ditto what Joel said. Katie has the same passion, and she still speaks eloquently of you. And each time when she wants to go on yet another trip, I think I'm going to contact you for one of those. But yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. You hear so much about our AP program we're very proud of, but really you see tonight there are so many wonderful other curriculums that the teachers have just put their hearts into. And the thing that really strikes me too is not just the passion of the teachers, but as Pete said, education camouflaged and fun. Each of these teachers had talked about how they're going to make learning enjoyable, which it should be for the students, but rigorous at the same time. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, everybody. I still want to talk to you about signing up for some of them classes, Chad.
Yeah, they're
Can I
great.
do that? Okay. All right. Really, now we got to follow with policy? Okay.
It'll be brief. It'll be
The next item on the agenda is policy first reading.
The policy committee met prior to our board meeting, and included in the board book are the recommended policy changes. And for the most part, all the policies that were recommended, the committee is recommending that at our next board meeting, the board approve those as presented. The only exception is policy 7305, which has to do with student concussion. And if the board recalls, when the board originally adopted this policy, it was modified so that it had to be a licensed physician who ultimately made a decision whether or not an athlete could resume participation, not a certified athletic trainer. And so when we adopt the policy, then it'll reflect our amendment that we made originally a couple of years ago. And other than that, though, most of the policy changes are legislated, so there wasn't a lot of flex with those. And then in some cases, it's just footnote references that have changed. But it's just 7305 that would be recommended with the changes.
Okay. Then the next item on the agenda, action items, SACID's amended Articles of Agreement.
And this is, I don't know if Joe's our representative on the SACID board, but SACID, we're a member of SACID, and they have amended their articles, and therefore, because we're a member district, we in turn need to approve those amendments.
Yeah, and this is, I spoke a little bit about this before a couple meetings ago, and this is that establishing a SACID's own governing board that will be ultimately responsible for a couple of the tasks that had historically been farmed out to a member district who served and fulfilled this role. So there's a couple things that happened during the year that are important for that board to approve, and has to do with the budget or hiring an executive director, or well, there's a couple other things I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but there were things that had to be specifically approved by a governing board that isn't the SACID board that I sit on, because the board that I sit on is made up of elected board members and also superintendents in a mix of all the 18-member districts. So one of the districts either volunteered or was kind of solicited to serve as the governing body over the Board of Control, which is what I sit on. And so there was quite a bit of discussion at the Board of Control on whether we should bring this to each of the member districts to have them review and approve. And it had to do with, you had to have a member district volunteer to fill that role, and it's been, past couple of years, I think it's changed once or twice, and then the current board that's fulfilling that role kind of wanted to pass the baton on to, you know, someone else to step up and fulfill that role. And so rather than trying to find another member district to fulfill that role, they decided to go this route and just kind of amend the articles and allow SASD to kind of create its own governing body, which is obviously perfectly legal under school code. It's just something that they haven't done in the past. And so this governing board will oversee the Board of Control, and actually it'll only end up meeting once or twice, or 2 or 3 times a year to fulfill its obligations. But that board has to be created from an elected board member from each of the 18 member districts. So in our case, I'll serve at that role as well. So I'll be on the governing board, and I'll also be on the Board of Control. For member districts that have a superintendent in the Board of Control, they'll have to have a board member fill that role. And I think some of this came about because things can be brought, like the budget can be brought to basically a board, and the board members that get elected in a particular community kind of have this SASD budget dropped on them, and they have to kind of approve it on behalf of the cooperative. And you know, they could feel uneasy about that because they don't really go to the Board of Control meetings, and they're approving all this, you know, all these funds and expenditures and whatnot. And you know, it just felt like you could technically run into a situation where the board might not agree. You might have a board of elected from that community that might say, I don't want to do this, and then it kind of puts SASD's operations in a bind that way. So rather than continue to search and switch those functions to another member district, we decided to go this route and recommend creating the governing board to oversight board. So I recommend the approval.
Well, Joel, I also have to just say thank you for continuing to represent our district in SASD, and now your new role.
So that'll be 3 boards I'm on.
That'll be 3 boards, yeah. Don't forget where you started, though.
That's right.
Here. But again, thank you for that time. So, okay, are there any questions about that? The chair will entertain a motion to approve and ratify the proposed the revised joint agreement bylaws as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Then approval of the 2016 summer school programs.
At our last board meeting, I presented the summer school offerings for the summer of 2016. And so this evening, I'm recommending the board approve summer school for 2016 as presented. The only minor change, we did get dates for the AP Human Geography, so those are included in the information. We're still waiting on another high school course for the actual date. But pending board approval this evening, then tomorrow, the buildings will begin getting the information out to our families so that they have plenty of time for registration and planning their summer vacations.
Great.
Okay, wonderful. Any questions or comments? Once again, happy to be talking about a nice, thorough summer school program. So, do you want to also say just again that it will be all at the junior high this year?
Yes, it'll be located at the junior high this
And
summer.
I think that's on all the forms, but
Right. And we will, for those families who elect it, we will provide transportation. Again, it's more like a shuttle service. We pick up at each of the elementary buildings, and then Washington Park, and then we'll bring the students to the junior high and then return those students to those locations at the end of the school.
all right. Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the CUSD 201 2016 summer school programs as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Superintendent's report?
Just a couple items under communication. Just a reminder that tomorrow night at 6:30 PM, we're having a parent university math night, and we'll begin at 6:30 PM in the Commons with just kind of a general informational session, and then we'll have breakout sessions at the elementary level, the high school level, and the junior high level. And each of those breakout sessions will present it 3 times so that a parent, if they have a child at each level, would be able to see each of those sessions. And then also just kind of a brief update on our facility projects. Obviously, we have some significant projects that will be taking place this summer. And Steve Cashman, our architect, is working with the buildings, finalizing those plans. As a matter of fact, he has a meeting on Friday with some of the high school staff with some of their plans. And we will invite Steve and then also Pepper, who is our construction manager, to future board meetings, and then they can also share more detailed information with the board in terms of timeline and cost. So far, though, the preliminary numbers are looking pretty good. We haven't gone to the formal bidding process yet, but there may be some opportunities to do some additional projects if indeed the numbers come in where they're projected to be.
Great. All right, are there any board reports? Okay. Are there any public comments? All right, then let's, somebody say something. Future meetings. 9th grade parent information night is Thursday, this Thursday, February 11th at 6:30 at the high school. Next Monday is President's Day, there's no school. Miller School Open House will be February 16th at 5:30, is that right? 5:30 at Miller School. Manning School Open House will be February 17th at 6 o'clock at Manning. And the next school board meeting is February 23rd at 7 o'clock here at the Westmont Village Hall. All right. The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining, personnel issues, student discipline, probable litigation, and the superintendent's evaluation instrument.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Notbush.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
And there will not be a vote after closed. Thank you.